the promo code Lombardi. You'll get a special deal. But before we get into all of our NFL talk, Michael, I want to start this hour with what's on your mind. What's on Michael's mind today? What has been percolating in your brain with all of the news that's out there?
Well, my mind has been on the Lakers, and it started this morning when I saw that LeBron took a max deal for 2 years, and certainly did the Lakers a favor. I'm sure he could have got a third year guaranteed out of them, but maybe the Lakers actually put their foot down and said, no, you're 40-some years old. We're only going for 2. But then the news broke that they hired Nate McMillan and Scotty Brooks as J.J. Redick's assistant, which in theory really sounds like a great idea. But in reality, it's hard. Okay, because once again, you've got a young head coach who's just learning his way, and you've got 2 former head coaches who probably think they should still be head coaches, who are now going to advise him on what to do, and neither of them are from the same school that they both agree on how to play basketball the same way. So, for example, if you just would have hired Nate McMillan to help JJ, he could have been the consigliere. He could have been off to the side. Then you hire 2 young assistants to kind of make JJ become the teacher. But now you've got a lot of opportunity for eyes to be rolled. And the one thing that kills culture more than anything is when rolling of the eyes occur. Oh, we're going to do that. Oh, we're going to do that. And you get that when you have a lot of older coaches or guys who have been head coaches. So I just think, to me, this has got, and I'm going to be interested to see what the great Will Hill thinks. I mean, he put this together. I mean, he's the mastermind behind the Lakers. So I don't know how this is all going to play out, because J.J. Redick's learning on the job. And to the fans, it looks like, well, he got 2 experienced coaches. But to the chemistry of the team, it's really hard. And then LeBron not taking the max deal, they couldn't get anybody. So the question then becomes, is this team good enough, another year older, to win the West with the Thunder getting as good as they got? Like, those Thunder odds, to me, that to me is the best odds out there on the table right now. They're going to be the best team in the West. They're going to prove it to be the best team in the West unless something happens. And the Lakers aren't even close to them.
Yeah, the Thunder plus 850 for the NBA championship odds. They are a co-favorite with the Denver Nuggets at 4-1 in the Western Conference. The Lakers, meanwhile, a little farther down the list at 14-1 in the West. But to your point about the experience factor, I think, yes, from the outside looking in, that's the first thing that you think of is that's very good that you're going to have all of this experience in there helping J.J. Redick ease into and transition into this new role since he's never been a head coach before. But the perspective that you're coming with is that there's too many cooks in the kitchen potentially. And then you also throw into the conversation that LeBron James is essentially the coach in himself too, right? And that at the end of the day, if you're drawing up a play in the huddle and he doesn't like it, he's just going to grab the whiteboard from you and change it right there anyway. So he's another coach. So that's a lot of voices, a lot of potential, to your point, for the eye rolling. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. And the not taking a pay cut thing is funny, because how much does this just show how well he knows that he can manipulate the media to say, well, guys, I told you I was willing to take a pay cut if we got these pieces, if we got this guy in, I was willing to, but we didn't. So I guess I'll just take it all. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not like, okay, let's go. I'm not taking. Maybe we can get somebody later. No, give me it now.
I'll give it.
I mean, give Kendrick Perkins credit. He said there's no way he was going to take a pay cut, and he was right. Give him credit for saying it. I mean, at least somebody on the worldwide leader stood up to the LeBron. I mean, it's his network. He runs it. I mean, look, Bronny got a 2-year guaranteed contract as a 55th pick overall in the draft. No, seriously. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Michael, that's another layer to this, though. If you're the Lakers, do you not feel like you have any sense of leverage in that contract negotiation with LeBron saying, dude, we just drafted your son. Can you not commit to us for, I mean, this is because he has the option in his deal after 1 year. We're just going to be going through this all over again next year, by the way. But couldn't they just say, we want you to commit to 2 years with us? I mean, ideally, you end your career with us. Your son is on the roster. Take a little bit of a pay cut so that we can really push toward a championship. No, I'm good. I'm just going to get paid.
No.
It's funny to me.
And you've made no moves to make yourself better.
Correct.
You've made no moves to make yourself better. I mean, you got no chance. I mean, come on. We're kidding ourselves here. I mean, if you're a Laker fan, you're sitting around there saying, if this guy's healthy. It's the same thing with Sixer fans. If we stay healthy, we do this. Come on. Please stop.
Lakers 14-1 in the Western Conference, 30-1 in the NBA championship odds. Also, something that we talked about earlier in the show that is, I think, very interesting, and I'm so glad that we started to dive into it, was the start of the new Hard Knocks for the New York Giants yesterday. And the peeling behind the curtain of what it's like from their general manager, Joe Schoen, as they've been trying to go through all of these decisions. I'm super excited to when we get to the episodes that are closer to the draft and seeing what some of their thought process was and any of those rumors that were coming out, the buyer's remorse talk that we heard about Daniel Jones. Were they going to try to mess around and get a quarterback in the draft? All these different things. But one of the big ones was certainly something we talked about in this team not knowing what their identity is. And one scene in particular certainly stood out that apparently neither does John Mara, the co-owner of the team, who it didn't sound like he was particularly thrilled with the idea of losing Saquon Barkley because of what he has brought to that offense. Take a listen.
Hey, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to let you hit free agency, find out your market, come back, and let us know if we can match it. If we can, we'll have those discussions.
I mean, in a perfect world, I'd still like to have him back. Until we can prove that we can have a decent offense without him.
Daniel's making a lot of money, and it's the fork. Like, we got to figure out is he the guy? So we got to protect him.
What do you think, Michael?
Figure out if he's the guy? We're still in figure out mode? See, here's the problem I have with it. You never heard once say, this guy fits our program perfectly. You never heard them say, this guy is exactly what we want a Giant to be. See, that's the verbiage you need when you're building championship teams. I promise you, if you walked around those halls in the early 80s and Parcells was running, they would say, this is a Giant-type player. But you don't know that anymore. You have no idea what a Giant-type player is. You have no idea what it is to build a team. To me, it's a little bit about what I watched were a lot of guys who are managers. Managers do things right. Leaders do the right thing. If there was a true leader in that building, the leader would have said, if we don't improve a quarterback, we're in trouble. And we can't, and even he said it, past performance predicts future achievement. And yet he's going to roll the dice with Daniel Jones and his injury history and Drew Lock as the backup. Like, it makes no sense. I don't care how many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches you eat on the way to work. I really don't. Like, it makes no sense at all. Like, leaders would have walked in there. Bill Walsh would have walked in there and said, look, here's what we're doing. Here's the plan. Here's who we are. He wouldn't have relied on Shane Walden to come in there and tell him exactly what we're going to do or what the defense looks like. No, this is who we are. Here's the standard of performance. Here's what we're going to look like on offense. Here's what we're going to look like on defense. I mean, they're talking about the tight end, Waller, as if he's still going to be on the team, and everybody in the league knew he wanted to retire. They just spent 8 months with Waller and his rap music, and they're still thinking he's going to come back. Like, it was, to me, again, this is what happens when you bring the cameras in. Right? You end up showing yourself, you really know what's going on? Are you in tune? You're a nice guy, no question. You worked your way up the ladder, no question. But do you understand how to build a championship level team? It's not when you're sitting there and say, we got to find out. No, you get paid to know. You went to every practice. You watched 9 games. You can watch every single game of him against the Eagles, Daniel Jones, and every single game against the Giants and say, is this good enough? Like, that's what you get paid to do. That's what you're paying $3 million a year, is to figure out what's good and what's great. There's enough guys in North Jersey that could tell you the guy's no good.
And ultimately, that final statement of Daniel's making a lot of money and we got to figure out if he's the guy, that stands out so much because we have a sample size. It's not like this is a player that you've only seen for 1 or 2 years. We have 5 years of evidence of what Daniel Jones is. Of that time, he has 1 season of decent performance where you were playing a last place schedule and where you had the situation was much easier. And again, to your point, like, you had Saquon Barkley, who basically did everything in the offense. And I understand what Joe Schoen's talking about from a protection standpoint of trying to upgrade the offensive line and make it better. But this is an organization has been trying to do that for a decade. And even when you've been drafting high caliber players on paper, you haven't been able to develop them into anything. So, okay, let's continue to invest in an area that we never seem to have any success out of no matter what we do and rely on this quarterback to protect them. But this isn't a quarterback that can do that. So I understand both angles. I struggle with the thought that Daniel Jones can be the guy. But we have 1 more minute left, and I want to ask you about one more thing that we saw in Hard Knocks. The Brian Burns trade talk that began between Joe Shane and Dan Morgan at the Senior Bowl on the sideline. That was so interesting is that really how things play out sometimes, where you just casually in conversation BSing say, oh, hey, how about 2 1s for Brian Burns? Would you do it? Oh, no, probably. What about a 1 end of this? Is that how things play out? Is that real?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as those two are so close together.
Yeah.
So, they know there's no poker playing going on here. They know each other really well. But, I think to me, let's go back a year ago. Joe gave Daniel Jones the $40 million. He had to know something about him to give him the $40 million. Last year, they franchised Saquon. See, here's what happens. We're watching it this year without the lens of last year, and the same people were there last year. What happened to that? Why wouldn't somebody say, but Joe, why did we franchise Saquon if we're just going to let him go? What, the market has changed that much? You can't pay a running back $12 million. Why did we pay him last year?
I personally loved watching it. I'm very excited to see how the rest of the offseason developed behind the scenes. The New York Giants season win total, by the way, 6.5 juice to the under.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Make this NFL season your best ever with our all-new VSiN NFL betting guide. It's jam-packed with everything you need to bet the NFL smarter this season, including in-depth previews of all 32 teams with win total projections for each one, new quarterback and head coaching breakdown, Super Bowl predictions, a prop betting guide, plus best futures bets from our VSiN experts, including MVP, Rookie of the Year, and Coach of the Year awards as well. Whether you're seasoned better or just getting started, our NFL betting guide's your ticket to smarter, more informed bets. Head to vsin.com/guide to get your copy of the all-new NFL betting guide today. That's vsin.com/guide. Alongside Michael Lombardi, Stormy Buonantony with you. We go from the NFL to a little NBA talk as free agency has been lighting up all of the info boards and Twitter lately. Bobby Marks joins us now on the Progressive Guest Line, ESPN NBA front office insider, former executive. You can follow him on X at BobbyMarks42. It has been a busy 48 hours, Bobby. Thank you so much for taking some time with us.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I'm going to start, Michael, without leading the witness here real quickly. But because of all of the moves that have been made in the Eastern Conference, the question everybody is asking, who's the biggest competition for the Boston Celtics right now? Where do you sit on this?
Are you setting me up for that question?
Just wondering.
Well, listen, when you get the best free agent not named LeBron James, and Paul George, and certainly you have Joel Embiid and you re-signed Tyrese Maxey. I will put them. I don't know if I'm ready to put anyone at number 2 right now. I want to see what else Philadelphia does. I think there's some work to do. They need a power forward. They need a little bit of depth. But I think you can listen. Boston at the end of the day is standing on a pedestal by themselves. But I think certainly, I think Philadelphia and New York are the two teams. Certainly we'll probably talk about Milwaukee also, but Indiana. But I think certainly where Philadelphia is today, they're in a lot better shape than they were when they lost, Game 6 at home against New York.
But Bobby, how do they do that with the George contract and the Maxey deal? How do they get a power forward and some depth?
Yeah, it's funny. They're going to go. They went from a team that had $60 million in room, and eventually they're probably going to be in a luxury tax year. What happened was they really benefit from Tyrese not signing that, or not both sides not doing that extension right now, because they're sitting at about $6 million in room. They're not going to sign Maxey until they basically use all their possible options in room. They could waive Paul Reed. I think you can get up to like 12 or 13. And go out and get someone, or maybe they can use him in a trade. The trade rules make it a little more flexible. So you could add Paul Reed and another player and maybe bring back a $15 or $16 million player. And you still have some draft equity if you wanted to do that. So there's definitely options. I think once of course, once Maxey signs, and then once you start signing the guys that Maxey signs, and then once you start signing the guys that were reported, Oubre and Drummond, then those options go out the window. So there's a timeline as far as how they continue building out the roster.
When you do add a guy like Paul George, how does that change the expectations for the 76ers? Like, they've already been there, but is the pressure becoming that much more on Joel Embiid with an addition like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, Paul George is going to Philadelphia as third guy, which is pretty nice. It's a nice little consolation prize as far as having him as your third guy. He was the number one. Him and Kawhi were certainly 1A and 1B in Los Angeles, but I don't know about whenever you sign a 5-time All-Star and a guy to a $212 million contract, and it's the biggest storyline of the certainly of the offseason so far. I think there's always pressure. I think, especially with Embiid's window, I would expect him probably to sign an extension sometime this offseason here that he's eligible for. But I do think there's pressure, and as you guys know, the ability to try to deliver a championship in Philadelphia there's a great reward to that. And I think every season for Embiid on this roster, I think there's continued pressure.
No question. So let's shift out to Golden State. Like Golden State, they obviously were never going to pick up Chris Paul's $30 million guarantee. They made no real attempt to sign Clay. What is their plan in terms of how do they handle Steph and still say to him, we're going to be a team to compete with in the West?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you got a balancing act of trying to budget. They were very outspoken as far as that they're basically working on a budget. You've got Curry on 2 years left. He can sign an extension this offseason. They're basically waiting for the next big All-Star to become unhappy. I mean, and I don't know. You could be waiting for a long time there because you have the picks and you've got the young players. They were certainly in play a little bit with Paul George. That did not work out here, but you lose Curry, you lose Thompson and Paul, and you basically, Mike, you saw him, and D'Anthony Melton's a nice player, but he finished the season hurt in Philadelphia, with a back injury.
Yeah, he's got a bad back.
Yeah, so that's your replacement here. I mean, I always say they don't put a banner up saying, we've got cap flexibility and draft picks. I don't think they put banners up in arenas anymore for that. But they do have it, but it's all a matter of it's all about timing. And as far as who becomes available, like I'll give you an example. Larry Markin in Utah is probably a name everyone's going to be talking about because he's in the last year of his contract. He's a former All-Star. But if they want to get in the bidding, they're going to be behind San Antonio, who's got a boatload of picks. Brooklyn perhaps has a boatload of picks. I don't think the Lakers, in that mix here, but they'll be behind some of these teams that have really built up their draft equity.
Well, speaking of banners, the Boston Celtics did just earn another one not too long ago, and now they're going to have to pay even more for their top players as Jason Tatum leapfrogs Jaylen Brown for the most expensive contract in the NBA right now. They also extend Derek White. How are they paying all these guys to keep this core together, and how long do you think it can last?
Yeah, and they caught a little bit of a break because the Brown Supermax that he signed last year and then recently the Tatum one, they stagnate. So the Tatum one doesn't kick in until next year. The same with the Derek White extension doesn't kick in next year. But there's going to be a moment of truth, though, and they'll get another year to try to repeat here. But there's going to be a moment of truth next summer when they potentially could have, with payroll and luxury tax, over $450 million. About $500 million for one season. And they're going to be forced to make some decisions, or whoever buys this team is going to be forced to say, you know what, I'm going to inherit a championship roster, but at a high premium, or we're going to start to move off some salaries.
And so then they just have to explain the second threshold. Yeah. We keep hearing when Paul George, they released that statement, what is? Yeah. I'm confused. I don't know what this means. Like I'm paying a double tax. I mean, is it like the mafia where you don't pay the VIG and then you got a double VIG?
I've never seen two words scare so many billionaires. I mean, I've never seen billionaires put these words. I've never seen a statement like that the other day when we're quoting the CBA and the second apron and all. Listen, here, this is part of the CBA, and it had been phased in. what happened was the league told teams you had a year to get your house in order, right? So the past year, the rules weren't phased in, but you know what some teams did? They went to the buffet line and ate all you could eat before the rules started, and they screwed themselves here, getting some high-priced contracts. So when the rules started on April 15th, basically there's two thresholds, okay? So if you're looking at it from a salary standpoint, we've got the first apron with the threshold is $178 million. Once you exceed that, you are not allowed to take back more money to trade. So if you're trading a $20 million guy, you can't trade for $21 million. It's got to be basically dollar for dollar or below. And then we've got this second apron, right? It's at like 188. Okay. Once you exceed that, then you can't take more money back in a trade. You can't combine salaries. That's the biggest thing. So if you had two $15 million players, you can't trade them for a $30 million player. So that goes out the window. The biggest thing is that if you finish the season there in the second apron, your first round pick 7 years out, so it would be 2032, now becomes frozen. You won't be able to trade that. If you finish in the second apron like 3 out of 4 years, this is a whopper of a rule. It doesn't matter where you finish in the draft. So in 2032, Phoenix had finished in the second apron 3 out of 4 years. If they had the first pick in the draft, it gets moved to pick 30. So it penalizes these teams who continually spend here. So that's why when the Clippers are saying, the second apron, it's really not about this year or next year. It would have been about in that fourth year when Paul George, if he had signed with them. So it's almost a quasi hard cap. You can get around it. Like OKC can get around it when you got 16 first round picks and you can continually build your bench out. Phoenix is hard because you have your top heavy with 3 guys, 160 million, and then you're just building out your bench and you don't have guys you can trade and add. So I always say if you're going to be in the apron, you really better like your team.
We so appreciate you making sense
job,
of it all
Bobby.
for us, Bobby. Thank you for that. And have a great day. We appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Bobby Marks. Again, follow him on X at BarbieMarks42, doing a great job over there with ESPN, former NBA executive. We're going to hit the break.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
If you like watching and listening to VSiN, you'll love all the great betting tools and content at VSiN.com as well. We got best bets from hosts and guests, betting splits, pro tips, trends, and betting news. Speaking of which, it's day one at the All England Club, and VSiN senior editor Zach Cohen is locked and loaded covering all things Wimbledon. Whether you're looking for daily match picks throughout the tournament, props, or quarter and winner selections, Zach's got everything you need to know on both the men's and women's side of the third Grand Slam of the year. Plus, it's football season, baby, already. I know it's June, but we're ready to go. The NFL betting guide is out now for VSiN Pro subscribers. If you haven't hit up VSiN.com yet, now is the time. Alongside Michael Lombardi, Stormy Buonantony with you. We had a great conversation moments ago with Ben Wilson talking about his hometown Green Bay Packers, and rumor has it our next guest is a believer in Green Bay as well. Former NFL wide receiver, now VSiN betting analyst, covers all things NFL from a betting standpoint these days with us. Mike Pritchard joins us on the Progressive Guest Line. Also, might as well just throw it in there, won a college football national championship. Pritch, welcome into the show. How are we doing?
I'm doing great, Stormy. Michael, great to be with you. How you guys doing today?
Great. I mean,
Great.
we're talking about, it's always football season here on this
That's
show,
right.
isn't it? So sell us on the Packers. Why are you a believer this year in the AFC North?
Well, I tell you what, it goes back to last year. I mean, I could start with Jordan Love and his 32 touchdown passes, right? I could do that. But understanding that the game is a young person's game, a young man's game, and it's an improvement game too. Just think about Jordan Love in his first full year as a starter and what he did with this outfit, a very young football team. If he gets better, if he improves like he should, I mean, this could turn into something really special with this player and with that roster. One of the things too that solidified it for me is the front office. You know, the succession plan from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, now apparently to Jordan Love, that's incredible to think about, right? But they have drafted well. They have a lot of talented players. They've kind of changed things up defensively. They changed things up in the backfield offensively as well. But it's a young team and coached well. I think LaFleur separated himself, asserted himself, and got from underneath that shadow of Aaron Rodgers a little bit. There's a lot more momentum there for the Packers in my mind that can make a run for this thing in terms of that division. The Lions, they haven't, proposed to me that they can be consistent over time. They've been a flash in the pan at times, but we'll see if they can carry it over into this year. But I really like what the Packers are doing and what they're all about.
I like Jeff Hafley, too. We just had Ben Wilson on, Mike, and he shares your optimism about the Packers, as I do, too. I think, it's going to be interesting because I thought Aaron Jones, and I love your take on this, I thought Aaron Jones was the difference maker in their offense in the second half of the season when he finally got healthy. And obviously, I'm sure they're concerned about his ability to stay healthy.
Right.
And I think, to me, Josh Jacobs gives them a little bit more power. Plus, he still can make plays in the passing game. I thought he was underutilized in the passing game for the Raiders.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. The holdout and certainly the contract situation didn't do him any favors. He's an AP rushing leader, all pro, right? And then you don't sign him. And, that's what the Raiders did, and that's what they chose to do. But I think getting started with this organization, a fresh start, and he is a dynamic player. And that acquisition too, Michael and Stormy, it tells me that the Packers want to get more to that inside zone. Aaron Jones was more of an outside zone, that kind of thing. But I think, Josh Jacobs' inside zone and really some counters and some powers. You're right. I mean, that's just a different dimension for this Packers offense that we haven't seen, let alone what Jordan Love can do with that 11 personnel and those receivers that he has as well.
Parity in terms of the odds at the top. The Packers are plus 210 in the division. The Lions a plus 150 favorite, and the Bears sitting there at plus 265 as well. Win total for Green Bay 9.5. Let's go to the NFC South here because it's another division with a lot of intrigue from an odds standpoint, where you have the Atlanta Falcons, who with the addition of Kirk Cousins are an odds-on favorite now, but a lot of people really like the Saints. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have won the division the last 3 years, and according to our betting guide, only Wes Reynolds is believer in the Carolina Panthers in the division. Taking a shot, hey, if not in June, when? But when you look at this division, what stands out to you most, and does anybody really have an edge in your opinion?
That I have third-degree burns betting on this division. I was riding with the Saints a few years ago when they had everything going for them. They underachieved. I thought the Atlanta Falcons could go worst to first. Going 7-10, having one of the easiest schedules. The schedule really lined up for them. Okay, they can win 10 games, right? They can win a division. That doesn't happen. So another degree of burns right there. So this one, throw darts at the board for this division, to be honest with you. I am a wait and see approach. There's no futures at all on my card or even in my thought process for this division. I got to find out who can prove themselves and who can overachieve the most. They can underachieve. We've seen that. They've proven that year in and year out. But can a team rise to the occasion and certainly take hold of this division? I'm on a wait and see approach with that one.
All right, so we're throwing darts. I mean, we're not Phil Taylor, the greatest dart thrower of all time, but let's throw darts. And let's keep the dart throwing in the South, but let's just shift it to the AFC South because I have no idea. I'm going to say I'm not throwing a dart at Tennessee. I'm just going to say that I don't trust Will Levis. But the other three teams, I really don't know where to go. I know everybody's going to say, well, you got to go with Houston. No, I don't, because I thought Houston got fortunate at the end of the year. Where are you on the NFC South? AFC South, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Danilo Hunter. I mean, I think that pickup right there, I don't know what the Vikings were thinking about, but if you're DeMeco Ryans and you are loading up your defense as well as loading up that offense, and they are young, and one of the things that stands out to me each and every year, Michael and Stormy, is that injuries are going to take precedent at some point. Older rosters are going to wear down. If you can find a team that's really, really young, coached very well, and can look to improve, sprinkle in some savvy veterans too that's going to be consistent, that to me is the consistency that you should look for as a better for a team. I think the Texans have the makings of that. I just talked about Detroit and the lack of consistency with that organization over decades. Well, the same kind of thing goes with Houston, but it seems like they've turned the corner a bit because that roster, I'm looking forward to the improvements with that roster. So, I would ride along with Houston, to be honest with you, just in that division. I think AR with the Colts will be interesting. We'll see what happens there. Tennessee will be happy to see what happens with the new coach, too. But no, I think the Texans right now, if I were to make a bet from a future standpoint, it would be with the Texans.
Yeah, a little over even money, plus 105 to win the division. Jacksonville was an odds-on favorite going into last season. They're plus 275 in the market. The Kansas City Chiefs are favored to make history and three-peat, win a third straight Super Bowl, plus 500, the price right now. And it seems like year in and year out, we give ourselves plenty of reasons to doubt the Kansas City Chiefs, yet they continue to climb the mountain. As you look at this Chiefs team in 2024, season win total set at 11.5. You have Spagnuolo coming back as defensive coordinator. Chris Jones is back. Travis Kelce is back. Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. The core is here. Is that enough to get you where you want to go once again? Or if not, who's the biggest competition for Kansas City for a Super Bowl?
Well, the core is enough, to be honest with you, Stormy. I think Andy Reid will reinvent this offense once again. I mean, think about all the speed that he has. I think they're going to go back and move away from matriculating the football and go back to that air raid phase that he had with Tyreek Hill. With all this speed, Hollywood Brown and Worthy, I mean, all this stuff, and then underneath stuff as well. I think Patrick Mahomes could put up some ungodly-like numbers if everything goes according to the plan. They can rely on that defense, right? They drafted very well on that side of the ball. They won a Super Bowl with the Pups. Now these guys are growing up into their own. I think they can take more chances that way. If I were to look for a team that could upend that, certainly, I mentioned the Packers. I'm high on the Steelers. I don't know how many people are. I think they're a unique outfit, but the Ravens certainly, we'll find out a lot in that first game. But the Ravens and in that whole AFC North thing, that's why I'm high on the Steelers, because I think that thing is so competitive. But no, the Ravens look to be a team that can get in the mix. I'm reluctant to go with the Cowboys just because, I just talked about Burns, a lame duck situation with both coach and quarterback. That scares me a little bit. But no, I think the Ravens are a team that you got to watch out for this year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with your concern about the Cowboys. I think that lame duck always is a factor. People think players, will play better, but I think when everybody's a lame duck, it's kind of a little bit hard. Without that pat on the back, it becomes even more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pritch, you're amazing. Thank you so much for the time, my friend.
Thanks, Pritch.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day.
VSiN lead NFL analyst Mike Pritchard right there. Always appreciate his time. When we come back, we will continue diving into the divisions in the NFC.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Make this NFL season your best yet with our all-new VSiN NFL Betting Guide. This thing is jam-packed with everything you need to know to be more informed ahead of this NFL season. We've got in-depth previews of all 32 teams with win total projections for each and every one, new quarterback and head coach breakdown, Super Bowl predictions, a prop betting guide, plus future bets from our VSiN experts, including, of course, all those great awards markets, MVP, Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, the list goes on. Whether you're a season bettor or just getting started, our NFL Betting Guide is your ticket to smarter, more informed bets. Head to vsin.com/guide to get your copy now. That's vsin.com/guide.
My favorite time of the week. I'm glad we moved it to Wednesday. I'm not going to be here tomorrow to celebrate the birth of our nation, so it makes me happy to have some storm warnings coming in. And let's start off with, you went last night to the T-Mobile Arena, and you wanted to experience Caitlin Clark. And I want to get your feedback about what you witnessed when 20,000 people saw this young lady play basketball.
Well, apparently I wasn't alone in wanting to go see her yesterday because it was a massive crowd. I was actually late for tip-off because there were so many cars as I was trying to park. The traffic was so ridiculous. But if anybody was concerned that, hey, this Caitlin Clark phenomenon, it's dying down. No, the Caitlin Clark fever is alive and well, okay? Everybody is all about this girl. We think about T-Mobile Arena, a venue that has hosted Stanley Cup final games, UFC 300, marquee basketball tournaments. You know what was the most attended sporting event in that building? A sub-500 Indiana Fever team visiting the Las Vegas Aces last night. 20,366 people in the house. It was the most fans in attendance at a WNBA game since 1999, fifth most in league history. Yes, the Aces have been the league leader in attendance the last couple of years, but for them to have to move from Mandalay Bay, Michelob Ultra Arena to put that game in T-Mobile because there was so much demand for it. And while, of course, the Aces fans were there in full force, even though Caitlin Clark had a bad shooting day, assist master flash for sure. She was awesome from that standpoint, as she always is. Shooting day was off. Anytime this girl did anything good, it was ooh, it was ah. It was cheering for her, even though it's a road game. Again, if anybody was concerned that maybe the hysteria was going to die off and that people weren't going to be into the WNBA, people weren't going to care about Caitlin Clark at the WNBA level, I can just say, having experienced it in person, I'm sorry, you were dead wrong. And congrats to her, by the way, and Angel Reese is the first rookies in a decade to both make the WNBA All-Star team. Pretty cool.
Love it. I love it. And let's stick at the T-Mobile Arena.
Yes.
Your favorite team that plays there, the Las Vegas Knights. Now, free agency in the NBA has dominated, and unfortunately, you've taken a lot of questions to me about the 76ers. So I'd like to ask you questions about your Golden Knights and all the movement that has happened based on the free agency in the NHL and the draft.
So I could probably go the whole segment on this, so I'm going to try not to ramble.
Go.
But I want to get on my soapbox for a minute here.
I mean, look, you let me ramble about Joel Embiid being on the ground 87 times. So why not? Can't you ramble every now and then? Come on.
I appreciate you, Michael. Yeah, this summer could end up being one of the most transformative in Golden Knights history. After a first-round playoff exit this past year, the Golden Knights earlier this week, saw 9 players on the roster that, guys that won a Stanley Cup just a year ago who are out the door, core pieces, leaders, gone. And for our football audience, there's only 23 players on an NHL roster, just 20 that dress. So essentially, this is like half the team that is out the window. And it's a list headlined by an original misfit and the Conn Smythe winner from that Stanley Cup final, Jonathan Marchessault, which I think hits particularly close to home for fans and people like myself. You think about the 7-year history of this franchise, and I don't know if there's a player that embodies more what this organization is about than Jonathan Marchessault, who was a cast-off from Florida, who comes to Vegas and ends up becoming a household name. He is the franchise leader in games played, goals, assists, points, playoff points, game-winning goals. The list goes on and on. Thought he was going to be a Golden Knight for life. Now he's a Nashville Predator. Just like, we talked about the Giants earlier. Saquon Barkley wanted to be a Giant for life. Now he's a Philadelphia Eagle. All this to say, for as much as the fans and myself that are close to the team, love the team, are passionate about it, this is a business. This is what happens. And ultimately, the Nashville Predators are making a big swing, and they want to win. They were willing to offer Jonathan Marchessault something ultimately that the Vegas Golden Knights weren't able to with this salary cap structure and with the 5-year term that Vegas and general manager Kelly McCrimmon weren't going to give. And I understand that this is a fan base because of the history that this team made in year one, and the connection that the community has to it, and the fact that they did win a Stanley Cup in such a young history, right? You are so tied and connected to all of these players. But this is nothing new. This has happened with the Golden Knights every single year that they lose marquee players that we love. Marc-Andre Fleury, Nate Schmidt, Ryan Reeves, the list goes on and on. Chandler Stevenson is also out the door this year. He's a guy that turned his career around, who was a fourth liner with the Washington Capitals that turned into a top line center with this team. He earned a 7-year, $6.25 million deal that the Golden Knights couldn't offer him. Good for him. He outplayed his contract and secured a bag elsewhere that the Golden Knights ultimately couldn't give him. And I just feel, Michael, you're a former NFL GM. I feel bad to an extent for general manager Kelly McCrimmon, who's given so much grief about this, when ultimately it's the business side of things. It happens each and every year, every team in every league. Turnover happens, but you know what? Stanley Cup odds, Vegas Golden Knights, they were 16-1 last week. You know what they still are? 16-1. Because Kelly McCrimmon also each and every year seems to put a roster together that can deliver. So I believe in Kelly McCrimmon. I know he'll figure things out and it'll be fine.
Well, that was my follow-up question to you is, after the dust is settled, where are you with this team? Forget the odds. Where are you think this team can be today, and what do they need to do moving forward?
Well, what's interesting is, this past season, mid-season, they made some acquisitions in a Tomas Hertl, for example, who, if they were to have made that deal this week, it would have been considered a big splash. And wow, look at the Golden Knights going for it again. But because it happened in season, it's kind of pushed to the side a little bit. They're really good about tinkering with the roster and doing the salary cap gymnastics and being able to find pieces and always make a splash. It sucks that so many guys are gone. I know it pains me as somebody who covered the team just 3 years ago. There's literally only 9 guys left that I even know. So it sucks. It's hard, but I think that the Golden Knights are going to be good. They're 16-1, like I mentioned, in the Stanley Cup odds. They're 8-1 in the Western Conference. They're the second shortest shot in the Pacific Division. I think they're going to be just fine.
Okay, let's shift gears to college football. Utah is now in the Big 12, and I think Utah has always played like they've been in the Big 10, even though they were in the Pac-12. Tell me what your read is on Utah as they enter the Big 12 this year with a 25-year-old quarterback and Cam Rising still playing for them.
Yeah, it's the 7th year of college football. How insane is that? Huge fan. I'm betting Utah everything. I love everything that there is to love about the Utah Utes in 2024. And let's start at the conference level, as you referenced. They're going from a league in the Pac-12 that this past year, right, was top to bottom, you could argue, one of the best, if not the best, in college football. Now they go to the Big 12, which is significantly weaker. The toughest games on their schedule are at Oklahoma State and at UCF. They avoid some of the tougher teams in the league, like Kansas State and Kansas. According to ESPN's FPI, Utah's schedule ranks 72nd in difficulty nationally. The last 5-ish seasons, they were among the top 25 in the hardest schedules in all of college football. Now let's throw in the fact that they still went 8-4 last year despite being decimated with injuries. You mentioned their quarterback, Cam Rising. He didn't play the entire year coming back from a torn ACL. He's going to be back. So many talented pieces on this roster are back. Their defense is going to be elite. To me, they have one of the best coaches in college football in Kyle Whittingham, who's been there forever. Also, you look at the home field advantage. This is something that producer Elliot, myself, and John Goulet were talking about yesterday with this Utah team. Home field advantage in Rice-Eccles Stadium, super underrated. And I think it's because it's like a stadium with its capacity 50 to 60,000. It's not like Texas A&M where you've got 100,000 strong, but one of the best student sections in college football. I've been in that building for big games. It is deafening. They were 6-1 at home last year. Lone loss to then number 8 Oregon in October, where the Utes were on their 3rd string quarterback. In fact, that's their only home loss in the last 3 full seasons. They're 18-1 in that time. They're 27-2 the last 5 years at home. How their season win total is 9.5 is beyond me. I cannot find more than 2 losses on their schedule, if that. They're plus 320 to win the Big 12, plus 120 just to make the Big 12 title game, which I hate to say, it just feels like free money based on their schedule. If they stay healthy, they're winning that. They're getting to the big game. Plus 220 to make the college football playoff, Michael. I think it would actually be a massive disappointment for the Utah Utes if they're not in the college football playoff. Everything is set up for them to have success this year.
Yeah, I would say that's right. I think Cam Rising's a good player.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think this is a guy that doesn't come with a lot of, the intangibles. And look, I know that, that Kyle Whittingham may retire and they've got Stanley in place. I think that's his name, right?
Morgan
to replace him. But Scally, I'm sorry. But to me, this is a tough-minded. This is a Big Ten team that plays. It's going to be playing in the Big 12. It'll be fun to watch.
They're tough, physical. The defense is going to be awesome. And Cam Rising, to your point, in his 2 years as a starter, 46 passing touchdowns, 13 interceptions. I don't hate a 45-1 long shot on him to throw in for the Heisman ring as well if you're looking for a pizza money play. Okay, that's our storm warning. Don't wait until fall to start betting the NFL. Get a jump start now with the VSiN NFL